Rossbach, the Freight Train Boogie, on a 2006 episode of The Guiding Light.
Come on!
He's a teacher, performer, and longtime friend, and he has been the manager, the main stage manager for Grey Fox for decades. Please give a great big welcome to Mr. John Rossbach. Other guests here. I remember when we did one of these workshop stages, and Sam Bush was on the stage with Jerry, and they did a version of White Rabbit in costume. Remember that? White Rabbit in costume, 20 ears and all. Well, we're real happy to have the Dobro master here. He's a 14-time Grammy Award winner. From what I understand, he is to the resonator guitar, which Jimi Hendrix was to the electric guitar. And he do Star Spangled Banner. Take us back to Woodstock, Jerry. We're so happy to have him here. And please give a great big welcome to John Rossbach and the great Jerry Douglas.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for being here.
All right. Welcome, everyone. You folks on the fringes, join the mainstream for a change. And come on in and see us. We don't bite. We took showers. We are happy to be here.
Be for yourself.
And we're going to take this interview wherever it goes. It's an open book. And if you have questions, keep them to yourself. But no, after a while we'll open up to some questions from the floor. And we'll see where that takes us. Jerry, welcome to Grey Fox once again.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be here,
and
as always.
Geez, I'll bet we can't count how many Grey Foxes you've done.
How many have there been total?
Well, I've been stage manager for 34 years, and there was something before me.
So like 40 years?
I don't know, something close to that, I guess. Yeah.
No, I'm not very good with numbers right now.
Anyway, well, first of all, I'm going to start with stupid question number one. Where were you born?
I was born in Warren, Ohio, a steel mill town.
And that is sort of like southeast of Cleveland?
Yes, southeast of Cleveland.
And near Akron.
Close to the Pennsylvania line, above Akron, famous for Devo and a lot of people, a lot of great, Dan Auerbach, Black Keys.
And there are a lot of acronyms we could talk about, but we won't. Anyway, sorry. Now, when was the first time you heard what you knew was a dobro?
The first time I heard a dobro was, absolutely was Josh Graves playing on a Flat Sparks record. Yeah.
How old were you?
First time I remember, it was probably 3.
Whoa, 3 years old. And when did you know that's what you wanted to do?
Oh, I knew I wanted to be a musician like then. So I was carrying around plastic guitars, plastic fiddles and things and falling on them, break them. And I didn't have, my first real instrument was a mandolin.
I see.
But when I knew I wanted to be a musician for sure was probably around 13, 14.
Now, your father, John Douglas, he had a band. What was that called?
The West Virginia Travelers.
And were you a West Virginia traveler?
Definitely, yeah. Toward the end, I got to join.
What age did you join that band?
13.
Okay. Would any of us know some of the people that were in that band besides your father on the guitar?
Probably not. They weren't. They all had jobs in the steel mills and had families, and they had already put down their plot, and they really couldn't. But they were really good.
Guys like Buzz Matheson, was he?
Buzz Matheson was in another band, and I'm sure they played together. There was a fellow named Harry Schaefer, who was still one of the best banjo players I've ever heard. And Ray Spinago, fiddle player.
Oh, on the fiddle player. He's originally from West Virginia, wasn't he?
Yeah, all these guys are from West Virginia. Every one of them.
That'd be West by God, Virginia.
Yeah.
We are both from West Virginia. Your parents, your father's from West Virginia. Is your mother as well?
Yeah.
And what county are you from?
Braxton County. right in the middle.
I want to let you know that Braxton County is a famous county for old-time fiddle players going way back. I'd say you get more old-time fiddle players per capita out of Braxton County, West Virginia than anywhere in the country possibly.
Maybe.
That's been documented. And so, who in your family played what?
My father played guitar and plays guitar and sings lead vocal. Had a band, you know, the West Virginia Travelers, as we said, and so they would all come to our house, and I could watch them rehearse. At 5 years old or 6 years old, you're watching a band rehearse and watch these guys figure out who does what. You know, why are they doing it again? And why don't they do another song? Oh, they're not finished with this one yet. We're not finished. Go to your room. Don't ask any more questions.
And did you join the band on the Dobro, or?
I did, yeah. I joined the band on the Dobro. They were playing a place called the Grizzly Bear Saloon, right outside of where the plant, the Republic Steel plant, one of their big doors, emptied out right into this place. And yeah, I was 13. There were little old ladies giving me vodka and squirt. That's what they thought I liked, so that's what I got.
Well, see, he's talking about the steel mills and the factories up there. Really, all the West Virginians in the 40s and 50s needed to find work. Just about every one of them that needed to find a better job moved to Ohio. They might have moved to some other states, but basically Akron became the capital of West Virginia, I think. And your area was full of West Virginians. The Kentuckians were a little further west, usually.
They were all in Dayton.
Yeah, and then you get the west side of Cleveland, and there were a lot of people in the Ford plant and all those different factories and national gas stations. I would say that there are probably more bluegrass musicians per capita in Ohio than any other state in the country, except the possibility of Virginia, maybe North Carolina, but there were more subscriptions for Bluegrass Unlimited in Ohio than anywhere else for years. So you were raised in a hotbed of bluegrass music, even though you say some of these guys weren't famous. I remember, you know, those guys were good.
I remember my father's band and Buzz Matheson's band were the only two bands in northeastern Ohio.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, after I had gone with the Country Gentlemen and come back, and there were all these Lawrence Lane and all kinds of bands up there. Everybody was playing bluegrass. It was cool all of a sudden to do that, or there were more, you know, immigrants from people coming up from West Virginia.
And see, the West Virginia story is the same. My family, my mother needed a job, and we moved to Ohio outside of Cleveland. Just like, you know, that his family moved out from central West Virginia, and so did we. And now, tell me about, how old were you when you went with the Country Gentlemen?
I was 16.
And how did that come about?
Well, I was playing at a festival the summer before with my father, and I looked out in the crowd while we were playing, and I saw Bill Emerson standing over there, and I saw Doyle Lawson standing there, and Charlie Waller standing over there. It was like, you know, it's like, what are they doing? That's kind of creepy.
They were watching you.
And so as soon as, when I came off stage, they really wanted me to leave there with them and go on the road. So I don't even have a white shirt, you know. So I said, you know, I want to, you know, school's going to start pretty soon. Let me go ahead and go to my junior year of high school, I guess it was, and then I'll go out in the next summer. So that's what I did.
That's what you did. Okay, well, like, what are some of the memorable jobs you played with them and experiences you had?
Doyle reminded me of one just a few days ago of, we were in somewhere down in coal country, West Virginia, way down around Bluefield somewhere, in some holler. And I don't know how Bill Yates drove the bus down there, but we were just about to play. I was walking around outside. I had one of these gigantic, just an idiot kid, you know. I was walking around with one of these big green fake cigars, trying to smoke it. and then all of a sudden, some old boy had just been paid, you know, it's coal mine. It was Friday, and they got paid on Friday. And this guy pulled out a hog leg and just like, boom, in the air. And Bill Yates grabbed me by the back of the neck and threw me in the bus and got everybody else in, and we just left. You know, it's like we didn't play. We didn't never play at all. I think it was a good idea.
So how long were you in that band?
Let's see, we went in 73 and we recorded it in 74, and I was in the band until 1975, when I went with J.D. Crowe in 1975. Came back to the Country Gentlemen for a very short time in 78 before I went with Buck White and the Whites, down home folks. Moved to Nashville and became decadent.
For those of you who are the younger side out there, the Country Gentlemen really revolutionized a lot of the attitude about bluegrass in this country, and they were a big deal. So all the musicians who've been around a while know about them and talk about them. And then
They were the newgrass. They were the first newgrass revival, weren't they?
they really were. They changed a lot of thinking about bluegrass, and yet, you know, they were Stanley Brothers freaks as well.
Yeah.
You know, so they knew, you know, all sides of it. And then you got J.D. Crowe out of Lexington, Kentucky, and well, the young people know his legacy.
Yeah.
That Rounder 044 is what they all call it. That record, what was it like? Where were the sessions for that thing?
We did them at a studio, I think it was Track Studio in Silver Springs, Maryland. And forget who the engineer was. I think Ronnie Freeman was around, but I just came over to play on like one song and ended up playing on, I don't know, like 8 songs.
Oh, I heard that J.D. had to be talked into it at first, and then once he heard you, he was all gung-ho for it.
But I had Tony and Ricky running interference for
I
me.
see. Yeah. Well, when he talks about Tony and Ricky, we're talking about Tony Rice and Ricky Skaggs, and that was one of the super bands in bluegrass music. I mean, you have J.D. Crowe, Tony Rice, Ricky Skaggs, Jerry Douglas, and Bobby Sloan, who had great timing. He probably was the least famous of all those guys, but he'd been around with the Kentucky
He was
Colonels.
left-handed.
Yeah, and he played some fiddle and some bass, but that was a true super band. And it's interesting, like, you know, Alison Krauss and all the people that play in her band, which there's somebody else we know plays in that band. You know, that record was a turning point for their lives. It really changed a lot of people's ideas about what bluegrass could be, and it's a benchmark. They set their standards by it, and
I can't figure it out.
well,
I don't know why.
it worked. It happened, and so you went on to Buck White and the Down Home Folks. When were they called the Whites by the time you were, you know?
Yeah, I passed up Boone Creek somehow.
Yeah. When was that?
Boone Creek was a very interesting time in my life. It was right after Ricky and I left J.D. Crowe at the same time. Tony went to the West Coast to play with David Grisman. We'd just come back from Japan, and it was like being the Beatles. You know, we felt like the Beatles and everything. So Ricky and I started our band. We'd always wanted a band, and Keith Whitley actually was supposed to be the lead singer in that band.
Wow.
And Lou Pirtle, better known as Lou Reed, was going to be the bass player, and Mark Pruitt was going to be the banjo player.
Boy, there were a lot of changes by the time
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So we got Terry Balcom. Well, Terry Balcom was already, he was part of the
I heard he was going to be the fiddle player at one point.
He was, yeah, he was going to be the fiddle player. And then when it all blew up and we had a gig, we had to go play, and Balcom said, I think I remember enough banjo I can play. When I was 10 years old, I played banjo. And so we got him a banjo to play. Harry Sparks let us borrow a banjo, and he started playing it, and he sounded just like he does right now. It's amazing. And Wes Golding came on, and the first gig we had, we didn't have a bass player yet, so we got this guy who was rock and roll, and he played Les Paul in some torch band downtown Lexington, and he played electric bass, so we got him to play electric bass with us, and we had to teach him everything. He
Wow.
knew no bluegrass whatsoever.
Yeah, Well, the Berkshire Mountains Bluegrass Festival was the precursor of the Winterhawk Festival, which is the precursor of this festival. It really changed in name only. And I saw you guys. It just blew my mind. I think it was 76. And then again, maybe in 78, I'm not sure.
Maybe, yeah, I can't remember. But I knew 76 and a Newgrass Revival was there too.
Yeah.
And we had a marijuana smoke-off with Newgrass Revival. I don't know who won. Nobody remembers.
So you, was that a year and a half, 2 years, something like that? 3? How?
Yeah, 2.5 years for Boone Creek.
Yeah.
And then...
Now, what's the deal with Vince Gill in that?
Vince, I have known Vince, I've known Vince since he was 14, and I was 16, 17. And met him in Oklahoma City, you know, when he was still living at home, going to high school. So I've known him for a long time. And he was playing in a band called Bluegrass Alliance in Louisville, not liking it, not enjoying himself. And I said, well, man, Wes Golding is writing these great songs. You come over and he'll write, you sing, it'll be great. And so he came over, but Wes wouldn't let him sing anything. So he ended up playing fiddle for a while, then he played pedal steel, then he played electric guitar, then he played mandolin, and then it was really good on everything, but just there was no door.
Can you get it? A band that wouldn't let Vince Gill sing?
No, yeah, it was really weird. But when he did, it was good. You know?
I'll bet it was.
It was rare.
I heard a rumor that Ricky Skaggs fired him. Is it true?
No, Ricky didn't fire him all by himself. It's not. He's
by himself.
It's not that cold.
Okay. Because I heard Vince say it on the Grand Ole Opry. Ricky was talking up how great friends they were, and he said, and Vince said, "Yeah, and I got fired."
And he owned the van we were traveling in, so who got fired? But Vince and I were out shopping. Vince, my big buddy, we're out shopping. We come back and we go over to see what's happening at Ricky's, and the other guys are already there, and they said, "Oh, we've decided to fire Vince." I thought, "Oh, great!
Whoa,
thanks, partners." So that was it, and then Vince went to California and hooked up with Pure Prairie League and wrote a hit song. Could have retired at 18 years old, probably.
Yeah, they were on Casablanca Records, a disco label.
I remember him being on Solid Gold, and with like my first beard, you know, it's pretty funny.
So how'd you get with Buck White and family?
I just sat in with him on a couple of little festivals, you know, we'd be out at, and we both noticed that it was a totally different sound than when they had a banjo player. I mean, they were more of a Western swing country kind of, not a hard-hitting bluegrass band at all.
Now, were you and Ricky in that? You weren't there at the same time for quite a while, but who joined first?
We both kind of joined at the same time, and Ricky was playing with Emmylou Harris at the time. So we went out and cut a bunch of songs with Emmylou. We're on Blue Country Girl and then what was it called?
Roses in the Snow.
Roses in the Snow, and a Christmas record too, Stable. And so she decided to do a tour, so she wanted us to come open, so the Buck White and the Whites went out and then did a lot of touring and played a lot. We just loved playing together. It was just not work. It was fun. They sang and I played backed them up, and it was so much fun.
Folks, that was one of the most joyous acts I ever saw. I went to see them every time I could. It was Ricky Skaggs and Jerry Douglas with Buck White and his 2 daughters, and that band just exuded happiness and joy.
Not the sickening kind.
It wasn't milk and cookies. It wasn't John Denver eating milk and cookies, but
no.
Yeah, but anyway. And so after that, where'd you go?
I think that I needed to get off the road. I had a young son. My son Grant was just born, and I wanted to stay home, and there was a lot of pressure, and things kind of blew up at home, you know, and And so I needed to get off the road, and at that point I started about 15 years straight, probably, of just playing on country records, and all kinds of records that came along. And,
You would see his name on everybody's record coming out of Nashville. And these were, I mean, a diverse array of great artists that had him prominently in the mix. And the sound of those records is still imprinted in my brain and in a lot of people's. What were some of the more interesting sessions you ever did in that situation?
one of the most interesting sessions, and I hadn't thought about it until you just asked me. And Stuart Duncan and I were both on this session, and this guy came over from France, and he wanted us, Stuart and I, to improvise over his scatting. And he never did it the same way twice, so we were kind of like bees, you know, just chasing each other. And he was the trying to think of Bobby McFerrin of France. So he was the scatting man, and he would tell us, okay, this is an Indian section, you pretend you are a curry. And play like you are a curry. It's hot and flavorful. So we would just screw around and do something that sounded sort of Indian. And he'd be, oh yes, that's what I'm talking about. And there was another one that Edgar Meyer and I did this record with a fellow named V.M. Bott. He's an Indian slide player, Veena. And the guy that ran the record company, it was really high tech, really high audio. It was like, you know, it was only played once. We recorded, and the guy wouldn't let us listen back to it because it would dent the tape.
Right.
And he's probably right. But we were doing it in the Spanish Mission in Santa Barbara. The one that had just had, their priest had just been busted for like, I don't know, like 30 years or something. And I didn't get the straight poop from him. But so we were doing it, and every night Edgar and I are writing, I skipped the part about the guy at the record company was having a long distance, a phone relationship with an LL Bean catalog operator.
Couldn't make it up.
So he would call and talk to her for like 4 or 5 hours a night. You know, they'd never seen each other. He decided to fly her out during the sessions. And so we're trying to be serious about it, but every night Edgar and I are writing songs and naming them after like body parts and sexual positions and things like that. All kinds of really, and none of those titles made the record.
So was it a reasonable living in Nashville doing sessions?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean,
very, very.
At that time, who were the top call guys that you kept seeing at sessions?
Mark O'Connor and I were at almost every session together at that point.
Yeah.
It was just we'd go in as a team. You know, they used us, and we would just back and forth. You know, play for Dan. Let's see, we did all kinds of things. Randy Travis and I don't know, start naming them. But we were there a lot together. But I'd run into, you know, Brent Mason or you know, just the first call guys. And drummers, you know, Joe Osborne, who just passed away this past year, was one of the first electric bass. He played on all of Ricky's first records, but he also played on Ricky Nelson's records, you know, and the Carpenters and stuff, all that. But he played on Ricky's country hits, and he was great. And just amazing players. But you just kind of show up, you know, and all your stuff would show up, and you'd pull out which guitar you thought would fit that song, or you'd trade. If it didn't fit, if it wasn't working, you just reach for another different sounding instrument, you know.
Well, I would imagine it was probably a lot of different experiences depending on the producer and the artist as to whether you were given leeway to play whatever you wanted or you were scripted.
I wasn't scripted because they didn't know what to do with me.
They weren't familiar with it.
Nobody really had ever written a dobro chart, you know, a musical chart. And I couldn't have read it anyway. So, but I was sent a certain direction, or play a, be a curry, play yellow here, purple here. It's like, who was the painter? Bob. Yes! Bob Ross of Dobro, that's me.
So, at what point did you start learning other kinds of music and listening to jazz or bop or, swing? And of course, you talked about the swing with the Buck, but...
That's a Western swing.
Yeah.
Sort of a Western swing. But I learned a lot in one day while I was playing in Boone Creek. Steve Bryant was playing bass with us, and I went to his house, which was down in the dorms down in UK in Lexington, Kentucky. And I was sitting on his porch, and he said, listen to this. And he played, it was Weather Report. Yeah. And I just felt like, I said, what is that? I love that. What is that? I want to do that. And then he played Chick Corea for me, all the same day. It was like the first time you ever heard the Beatles for me. And it changed my whole way of thinking. I started thinking like a horn player more at that point, instead of a slide dobro, slide player.
Well, who were some of the musicians that inspired you to think of the lines that you play?
Wayne Shorter, because
We're talking, the jazz.
The jazz guys well, Miles Davis is amazing. You have to start. You have to listen for a long time and to get into the tone and the consistency and how exact.
And of course, that guy reinvented himself about 5 times over.
Yeah, he would take a sabbatical and come back as a different guy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But those were, and Django Reinhardt, Stephen Grappelli were, that was, Ricky and I were doing that when we were with the Country Gentlemen. We were just sitting listening to that stuff going, we should be able to do that. And tried it, and then we met Tony Rice and went, oh hell, he can do it. So we can do it. So, and then, meeting Grisman totally turned me on to a whole new world. But Tony, I would go to Tony's house before we were going to record something out there and hang out with Tony, and we would set up all night and play Miles Davis and Eric Dolphy and just the, just need a 1-800 suicide prevention number, sit there and listen to this stuff all night and just love it. And then the next day you find that it's crept into your playing. And that's how you advance your own music and learning and your encyclopedia.
Now, have you spent much time on other instruments?
No, really, it just keeps me so intrigued, And when I don't want to play dobro, I don't want to play anything. I don't want to hear anything. But I get tired of hearing dobro. So I've been one of these guys who've tried to make it sound every possible way but a dobro. I've come back around to loving the sound of that guitar.
Well, when it comes to, Josh Graves, how many of you have seen the Earls of Leicester?
Today.
Okay. Well, that band pays tribute to the legacy of what Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs did pretty much after 1955 with the dobro in the band. An instrument which people wrongly say that Bill Monroe hated. He didn't hate it until Flatt and Scruggs got credit for it, because they were rivals in his mind. As a matter of fact, Buck Graves told me he played 6 shows with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys in 1951.
Oh, wow.
And Bill loved the blues. So
Yeah.
there you have it. Now, were there other dobro players that you were listening to coming up?
Tommy, who just played up here just
Yeah.
a few minutes ago, was one of the
Tommy
first
Boy.
real dobro players I ever ran into, and helped me out a little bit. I just he didn't tell me how to do anything in particular. I just watched it. I learned from watching, because it was strange for anybody to see another dobro player. We were like, I don't know, white deer,
Well, did you ever run across Speedy Christ?
Speedy Christ, yes, in West Virginia, very underestimated
You bet.
Great dobro player, and the coffee drinking Nighthawk,
Lee Moore.
Lee Moore, coffee drinking Nighthawk at WWVA. I heard him early on. I heard Oswald, and I heard all these other guys, but Josh was the one who got my attention because he could keep up with Earl Scruggs. He could play that role, the continuous thing.
Now, you got to realize what Josh did was so revolutionary on the instrument. I mean, before that, you had some great players. You had older guys like Duck Atkins, and you had, Shot Jackson, and later on Lloyd Green and those kind of guys. But it was Oswald who had the tone and that sweet sadness. But Josh took Earl Scruggs' right hand and put it on the dobro. Isn't that about right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I think Earl gave him the first pick he had for the third finger,
Yeah.
He said, try this. use another finger and see how fast you can go. And it works. I flicked a pick off into the front row not too long ago. Tried to finish the song with two fingers, and it's pretty hard. I was just trying to imagine that note would have gone there. It would have been great if I just had my pick back.
Now, was Mike Aldridge on your radar?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My dad, just the last trip up to see my parents, my dad found his old tape recorder and the tapes and all the stuff, and he had taped me playing a bunch of Mike Aldridge songs when I was 14. And I was just trying to be him. I was just wanted to sound like him, be like him, and later on when I met him, we were at this really wild festival in Warrenton, Virginia, and babies born, people dying, it was consistent population. But Mike and I were walking across a field, and I was just thinking, this is so cool. I'm walking with Mike Aldridge. This is so cool. I can't believe this. I'm walking along, and we're walking along, and there's all of a sudden this guy comes out of nowhere, and he doesn't have anything on, nothing. And he's long hair. He looks like Jesus. And he's walking, and Mike said, "Yeah, he doesn't have any fucking clothes on." And I went, my hero swore. And then I thought, wait a minute, I say that too. And I thought he was all more cooler to me.
But in public, he was called Mr. Clean.
Oh,
and
such a
the thing is, as a player, he was Mr. Clean.
The cleanest ever.
And the first time I heard Jerry play, I thought to myself, he's heard Josh, but he must have been listening to Mike Aldridge, and I find out I'm right.
Yeah, well, there were only two guys to listen to, so didn't have much choice then.
Yeah, well, Mike Aldridge revolutionized the second wave of dobro and bluegrass music, in my opinion.
I hope he gets voted into the Hall of Fame this year, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
I voted for myself, but